Hello, welcome to Business Incorporated Live on Channels Television, the start of another trading week. Here's what's coming up in the next 55 minutes. We count the cost as global IT outage hits airlines and banks. We'll discuss what next. And Egypt's natural gas production hits lowest level in 6 years. And still talking about lows, Kenya's riots send the shilling on its longest slide since January. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Ladi Williams. First off, let's get a check on the commodity markets now. I'm starting with oil prices. There were little change earlier, but now we see a big drop down about 0.41%, $82.29 a barrel. That's what we have for Brent. Then the US grade, that's normally holding that $80 psychological level. It's gone below that, $79.72 a barrel, down about 0.51% in this afternoon trade. Definitely, we're still seeing issues there with geopolitics and supply constraints impacting the market. But this time, we're looking at some of the flows into the market. We see Biden there announced he would not seek a second term as U.S. president, while investors are watching out for more signs that U.S. interest rates could be cut early as September. So we see all of that playing into volatility right there in the oil market. Let's get a check on metals now. We see gold prices it did edge up today, but other metals that we track going in the opposite direction. We see gold still holding on to that new high, $2,400 per ounce, 0.30% up, but we're seeing silver less shiny, marginally down, 0.05%, $29.28. But we still see analysts still bullish on these metals going further into the second half of 2024. Then we see palladium, $901. So away from the $1,000 mark, now we're trying to see if $900 is going to hold. That's for palladium. So it's still about rate cuts at this point, pushing his market, but we see gold shining more than other metals today. Well, to other stories now, as experts and economists look ahead into 2024, for what lies ahead for the Nigerian economy, some believe the second half will still be marred by issues for the first half of 2024. According to Dr. Bola Adigun, the government needs to provide the enabling environment for some kind of soft landing. Take a listen.
If the MPR increases further, and then the production process becomes more expensive, right? At the end of the day, those prices will be transferred to the end user or to the consumer. So I think in that regard, there is need to have a balance in that. Another thing is we need to address food crisis in the second half of the year, because statistics are nice, but the reality on ground is very important. You agree with me? So we need to address food crisis. Now, the steps the government is taking in, for example, suspending tariffs on certain grains, in bringing in some farming equipment, setting up a committee to address our food crisis. There are steps in the right direction. But I think another critical fact we need to do is address insecurity so that people can go back to their farms. And if people can go back to their farms, then we can be sure that our food production in the next season will be much higher. Now, the prices are reflective of demand and supply dynamics. When we have enough supply, prices naturally will crash to achieve an equilibrium. So I think in the next FY, while some of the programs, policies are in the right direction, we have to accelerate so that we ensure that we don't have a sluggish economy and the average Nigerian can start to feel the impact, both in their pocket and also at their
Stories now see Dr. Emomotomi Agama, the Director General of the Nigeria's Securities and Exchange Commission, has emphasized the importance of adopting environmental, social governance principles for sustainable development. He was speaking at a recent event in Luanda, Angola. He urged the sector regulators, businesses, and stakeholders to collaborate effectively in achieving these goals. ESG principles serve as criteria for evaluating a company's impact on society and the environmental, guiding socially conscious investors. Dr. Agama highlighted the significance of issuing clear guidelines, building capacity, and monitoring disclosures to ensure tangible benefits across environment, society, and economy. He underscored that integrating ESG principles not only mitigates risks, but also enhances reliance, positioning Nigeria as an attractive destination for sustainable investment and contributing to global sustainable development agendas. Well, now let's delve into why ESG is gaining prominence, its impact on businesses, society, and the global space at this time. Also looking at the FITC Sustainability ESG Institute. Joining us for this conversation is Ms. Chizo Malize. She's the MD CEO, FITC, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Lovely to be here again.
Fantastic. It's been a while. Yeah, you've been on the show.
I'm here now.
In our new studio. It's great to have you.
Beautiful studio, I must say.
Thank you so much.
Well done.
So much happening in the ESG space at this point. But before now, nobody was really talking about ESG, but it seems to be a prominent conversation right here in Nigeria now. Talk to me about why this is happening.
So I'll start by speaking to ESG. ESG is environmental, social, and governance. Environmental speaks to the need for every individual, organization, and government to be great custodian of nature. And society must also align to this to be able to build a great place for the future. Social is all of our societal activities towards creating an environment that is good for everyone to live and thrive. And governance refers to ensuring that organizations and institutions have systems and structures that make them well governed,
right,
just so that there is sustainability and longevity of these institutions. And so you see that the E and the S and the G all work together to contribute to building a wonderful future, not just for those of us in this part of the world today, but also for the future owners of the world.
Right, quite interesting, definitely. But are we starting to see some kind of impact, at this time? Because, we've been talking about this since, I guess, 2023. Have we seen some kind of improvement, when it comes to ESG with businesses and government?
There is a lot of impact, and we'll speak to it in terms of business and then the society. Through ESG, there are systems and structures that regulate organizations, helping organizations conform to the needs to imbibe and practice ESG. And so through their initiatives and practices and programs, they are able to align, whether it's with environment, being custodians of the world, protecting the environment, even through activities that are as simple as planting trees, not cutting down trees, using alternative means of communications within the organization rather than print on hard papers, because you can share documents without printing and then you preserve the entire environment.
I guess that's why I have this tablet here.
And that's the reason you have the tablet, so you're not moving papers and then making the world worse than we met it.
Right.
There is also the need to ensure that we protect the climate, aquatic nature, and all of that. So with regards to the S, which is societal impact, there is significant impact in society, because now through ESG, organizations are forced to be very conscious of all of its stakeholders, its employees, its suppliers, its customers, and of course the community in which they live. And every organization that is able to do this oftentimes are able to not only make investment in the society, but is also posting significant profit because they are very positive in the minds of their stakeholders. And with regards to governance, organizations through ESG are also pushed towards ensuring that there's solid quality corporate governance. And so it is not an individual organization ending at a president that takes all of the decision. There are structures like the board that is regulating the activities of management and staff, and of course staff also, all connected to the diverse stakeholders. But more importantly also, the governance allows the organization to think about the diverse stakeholders, equality, equity, inclusion. How many of the females get opportunity to get into management? What about the people who are disabled? Are they able to get opportunity within the organization? But lastly is also ensuring that there are smart systems and processes like audit, like risk management, that limit the risk and losses in these organizations so that their performance will be optimal. And so you see how all of this dot into impacts that comes back to the society. So ESG is designed for principles and practices that would help the future, our society be better, and then the future be greater for everyone.
Yeah, because we really need to secure the future, at this time. But looking at that E, when it comes to environment, and you look at businesses in Nigeria, we see most of them still have to run on generators at this time. How much of an impact is that having on compliance, when it comes to the E?
So it totally brings a lot of pollution. But you remember also that different organizations, different individuals, different society across the globe are in different states with regards to environment. Things as little as keeping the environment clean with intentionality adds up to that. Then regulation is also very important. And that's the reason why it's not just in the hands of individuals or society or the organizations, but regulators play a critical role. And so individuals and businesses are forced to be able to report the degree of compliance to environmental factors. So when you think about even all the way to financial services, people are able to either borrow from a window because they are totally compliant to ESG principles. And so in this report, it is also expected that your customers are also aligned to ESG principles and practice. And you find out that it will continue to move from 10% to 50 to 80, and compliance becomes total and 100% at some point. So starting is the issue, understanding the principles and practice and how they benefit organizations is extremely very important. And that's why we are consistently creating the knowledge and awareness so that individuals, organizations, businesses, and society can align and imbibe to ESG principles.
Right, definitely not an easy process, but it all starts by doing one thing, then you keep growing.
Becomes incremental.
All right, so talk to me about global trends now. What are you seeing, in the global space when it comes to ESG that we should actually start preparing for in this part of the world?
So globally, we are speaking to green financing, we're speaking to compliance, we're speaking to regulation, we're speaking to reporting, and I'll speak to reporting. So organizations are forced to report their degree of involvement and compliance to ESG principles. And so what that means is nobody is leaving it to the organization to consistently do what they would like, but help them to ensure that from the onset, they are aligning their practices to a particular strategy and framework that they can report at the end of a season. So reporting has become very critical. So you are making those ESG initiatives an investment, but you want to be able to report them as well. And that's such a technical area. So you need to understand how to first set the strategy, second, set the reporting framework, so that by the time at the end of your cycle, you are able to report your investments, and you're also able to show how you have protected the world and helped the society. And so reporting is very critical. Now we can also speak to green financing. So back in the days, anybody can get any loan to do anything. But today, it's important, if we talk about environment, for instance, it's important that where funds go are areas that promote the environment and not areas that take away from the environment. And so institutions are becoming more deliberate about the sort of customers that are in their books. And they're also compelling these customers to learn much more and align to the ESG practices so that they are not disqualified from even obtaining loans. And imagine what can happen with the financial service sector or the customers of the financial service sector if neither are compliant, neither is compliant to the ESG principles. So there's continuous understanding, embracing, imbibing of these principles, and this is not only globally, but it's also in Nigeria. And so the energy sector, the financial service sector, the manufacturing sector, and even not-for-profit organizations have started to not only promote this, but also help individuals and businesses to be very compliant. Imagine what incremental impact would happen if the consciousness is high and the embrace is high, and over time, it definitely will achieve that goal of bringing and building a very, very safe future for everyone.
Safe future for everyone. That's what we need at this point. All right, talk to me about the FITC Sustainability ESG Institute and what we can expect from that.
Right. So FITC, as a world-class, globally inspired, technology-driven organization, we are always at the forefront of bringing knowledge solution to the industry that we serve, which is the financial service sector, but of course to the society at large. And so at FITC, with the emergence of ESG, the need for compliance, the need for regulation and reporting, we have created the FITC Sustainability and ESG Institute to be able to bring knowledge to all the stakeholders that are relevant so that every single individual have access to insight, research, methodologies, framework, systems, structures that can equip them be the best, both in terms of designing their strategy, executing their initiatives, and reporting their actions in compliance with the ESG principles. And so you definitely would have cohorts and models and workshops and conferences that would break the ESG principles into extremely simple terms so that there is not only understanding, but there is also acquisition of skills, but more importantly, true impact.
And I guess maybe the E and S part of it might soon start to, mean something to individuals and not just businesses and governments at the end of the day.
It has to mean a lot to individuals because you need individuals to drive it.
Right.
You need individuals to even be conscious of their environment from their homes and their offices. How many times do you leave a room and you flick the light off, knowing that it costs a whole lot to generate that power and energy?
Shout out to the Band-Aid customers at this point.
Absolutely. You don't need organizations and government to tell you that it does cost money, so you're able to do that. And how much of all individuals can become more aware of the damage that individually people are doing to the planet,
right,
based on their action and their inactions. So driving individual understanding is as important as driving corporate and government understanding and compliance.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Always great having your perspective. Ms. Chizo Malize, she's the MD CEO at FITC. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Very lovely to be here.
Fantastic. All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we're heading straight to the markets. How's the week kicking off for the global markets we track and the local boss right here in Nigeria? That's our next conversation. Just stay with us. All right, let's head straight to the markets. Now we have Anete Edet with the details. It's starting from the local boss and is going to head on to all the global markets that we track. Great to have you, Anete. So positive outing last week, I guess, for the local boss. So we're trying to find some kind of balance at this point for the second half of 2024, but it's looking quite quiet. But I wonder if we're going to get that big correction for the local boss in this second half. Who knows at this point?
Well, Ladi, surprisingly or interestingly, let me say, the markets is, last week we saw profit taking in 3 sessions, and then we saw some comeback from the market in the last 2 sessions. And of course, we attribute that to the increase on the share price of MTN Nigeria, Airtel Africa. Those are the major.
Yeah, we see the telecoms came out to play last week.
Exactly. And then we now saw a 0.87% rebound on the market, closing the week in the green. And of course, this week, from this week, another earnings season begins. Second quarter of 2024, and of course,
the earnings are upon us at this time, and it's quite interesting. MTN, Airtel, they come out to play, then they now go to sleep for a long time. I wonder if it's going to be the same situation.
Particularly Airtel just comes once in a while. Once it comes up in the red or in the green, it has a way of shaking the market.
It goes to sleep.
And goes to sleep until further notice. Exactly. Talk about hibernation.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got the word. All right. So at intraday, let's take a look at how the numbers are printing. 0.05% at intraday for the Nigerian equities market. Although the last second I checked, the market had gone into the negative territory. But at the last count, 100,536.81 points. That's what the market was trading at this percent, which we see it at intraday. For the South Africa's JSE, 0.77% at intraday, and of course, going in between 80,000 and 81,000 back and forth for the Nigeria's stock market major competitor. Now, for the other two big markets across the continent, we see the EGX of Egypt, 0.6%. That's more than 0.5% in the green at intraday at 28,000, almost at the 29,000 points. While for Kenya, it ended last week. That market is still trading far behind the rest of the markets on the continent. It was down 0.1%. Now, we're talking about Nigeria's financial markets because today, as we speak, we're currently having the FGN bond auction for July, where the government is seeking to raise about, we'll be offering 3 FGN bonds valued at about 300 billion naira. So far, that is for the lookout for the market as we speak now. And tomorrow, we'll be having the decision from the 2-day policy meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank, which currently has begun that meeting. But tomorrow will be the decision day. So we'll be having all of that. And to give us more perspective on these two, as well as what to expect from the markets, let's talk to Miriam Yakubu, financial market analyst at Chapel Hill Denham, for more details about that. Thank you for joining us, Miriam.
Thank you for having me, Anita.
Okay, so now let's start first with the bond auction for July. So far, there's been a kind of like a slowdown in terms of the cost of the borrowings from the debt market. Now, 300 billion naira. How enthusiastic are investors for the federal government's bond with this latest offering to the markets?
Okay, so we know that they are coming in to raise about 300 billion naira, and that is across the 3 maturities. We expect that yields will be higher. This is owing to the fact that the system has been plagued with the dearth of liquidity since the start of the month. At the last NTB auction, the average stop rate was at about 20.4%. However, we expect that this will be higher as investors are coming into the market to get higher yields, and also as a result of the dearth of liquidity.
Okay, so now let's flip over to the other side of the market, where we're talking about monetary policy rate. Just last week, we saw Nigeria's inflation rate crossing the 34%. Central Bank says they're targeting 21%, and at the same time, also looking at interest rate lowering. But tomorrow will be the interest rate decision day. So what are your outlook? Do you expect 100 basis points rate, a hold, or a cut by the Central Bank's MPC?
So as we know that the month-on-month moderation that we saw across headline food and core inflation for the past 3 months has sort of truncated, with headline inflation month-on-month now at 2.3%, food at 2.5%, and core at 2.1%. And as a result of this, we expect that the MPC would hike rates, though not aggressively. We don't expect them to do anything above 50 to 75 basis points at the MPC meeting this week.
Okay, so now let's talk about the markets finally, because we're now the earnings season has begun. So what are your expectations for the equities market as well as the fixed income markets? I know that there's going to be an NTB auction on Wednesday. So give us your expectation for the rest of the week. We've just begun Monday. So give us your outlook for the rest of the week across the markets.
So this week we expect Airtel Africa's results. We believe that the results would come out okay, considering that Airtel Africa operates in about 14 countries, and despite the issues that we've seen in the macroeconomic environment of Nigeria, there's no concentration risk for Airtel, and therefore we expect that we'll see a decent and modest results. In terms of the market this week, we see positive sentiments around GTCO as it is currently trading above its offer price. We also see profit-taking activities in UCAP, considering the fact that their corporate disclosure that they released last week, as the share price went up, there have also been profit-taking activities now. At the NTB auction this week on the fixed income side, we expect that rates will print lower, especially for the 1-year paper, at about 21%, not like the 21.24% that we saw at the last NTB auction, as we expected that would have been a one-off at the last auction.
Okay, Miriam, I think we'll leave it there. Of course, keep our eyes on the market, particularly where people are putting their money, where their mouth is. But thank you so much for your analysis on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Also, Miriam Yakubu, financial market analyst with Chapel Hill Denham, with the market numbers for intraday and for the rest of the week. Now, let's take a look at the Middle Eastern markets, where we see mixed trading across the board there. For the United Arab Emirates, where we always make our first stop, Abu Dhabi 0.25%, about a 0.25% in the green, and still oscillating in between that 9,000 to 6 points. While for the Dubai FM, the other side of the market, 0.13% at intraday for that market. On the other side of the market, where we see Saudi Arabia and the Qatari stock exchange, both on opposite sides of their performance. But for Sunday, where these markets trade, they're always open on Sunday. They had a very strong posting where we saw lots of bargain hunting across that markets there. Now, from the Middle East, we fly over to the United States, where we see the stock futures there ticking higher after posting their worst week since April. That's sometimes last week. And this is coming at the same time where the the current U.S. President, Joe Biden, announcing, on Sunday that he will be stepping down for his deputy, Kamala Harris, in the presidential race. And this is coming amid so much pressure on the 81-year-old to step down in order to have a very formidable candidate against his opponent, Donald Trump, where we'll see how that turns on the market. But in terms of what to expect for the U.S. market, as well as for other markets, we expect that first, on the economic side, there will be inflation numbers from Singapore, but and as well as from the U.S. and some other market indices, which is expected to shape the performance of the market. And from the United States, we cross over, making a final stop for the Asian market, where we see them being hammered. As a matter of fact, being pummeled into the red territory. And of course, the Nikkei going away from the 40,000 level back into the 39,000, deeper into the 39,000, almost just midways into the below the 39,000, 1.16% for the close of Monday. For the South Korea's Kospi, also more than 1.14% in the red. For the Hang Seng Index, 1.25% in the green. While on the other side of the market, we see Shanghai, that's for China, 0.61%, and Australia, ASX 200, 0.5% in the red for the close of Monday's trading session. So that's it for the market for Monday. So Ladi, that's what the globe is telling us for major markets that we track.
And we were warned in 2023 that 2024 half the world will be going to the polls, and definitely markets would definitely be impacted. We're already seeing that play out in Asia, and some have called it a Trump trade, at this point. They also spoke about earnings seasons right here in Nigeria, and they say the stock market is the barometer of the economy. So we're going to find out how the economy is actually doing with the Q2 results.
Yeah, but when you mentioned that, before, just a few seconds, when you mentioned that, it's actually the barometer of many countries, but how about Nigeria? Does it really reflect the macroeconomic environment?
Right.
Because it's a good
Your
question.
guests say we're expecting Airtel, but the good thing is they're in other countries, at this point, so that might actually play into a good outing, for them for Q2, but we'll definitely be watching out for that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Anita, for giving us the details for the local bourse and most of the global markets we track at this time. Let's take it on to London now. We have Juliana joining us from our London studio. Great to have you, Juliana. So we see Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Education Secretary unveiled Skills England at this point. Tell us about this and what to expect.
Good afternoon, Laddie. That's absolutely right. So Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, has been speaking in Hampshire, England today. This is off the back of hosting about 50 European leaders at the European Political Community meeting last week in Blenheim Palace. And one of the big talking points was about trying to tackle illegal migration and migration of foreign workers. I believe the UK government pledged about £80 million for African governments to try and tackle the issue at source. So off the back of that, we had some pretty significant announcements this morning, one of them being the launch of a new public institution called Skills England. I suppose, the name says it all, but basically one of the main tasks, shall we say, of this public body, this new public body, is to focus on bringing up the skills of domestic British workers to prevent more foreign workers from coming into this country. So this is obviously going to have a significant impact for our viewers watching from Nigeria who may want to come into the UK. We know that migration has always been a really strong topic in the UK, getting emotions from both sides of the barometer, but especially for this new Labour government, they really want to tackle migration and illegal migration. I think over the past couple of years, about 2 million individuals have come into the UK looking for work, which is great, right? We know that we need workers from across the world to work in various sectors, but as we have seen, the economy has stagnated. And so one of the ways to raise the economy without raising taxes is to try and sort out some of the skills shortages that we have. I believe, according to the government's own data, about 1 in 3 vacancies at the moment are vacant because we don't have those skills. So I believe there are going to be there's going to be a cross collaboration of government departments, including the Migration Advisory Committee. They'll be identifying what areas are in need of uplifting skills, and they'll be rolled out over the next couple of months. I'm sure the new Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, will be announcing how this is going to affect anybody that wants to come to the UK to work.
All right, and the season to check the health of companies upon us at this time, and we have some forward guidance now from Ryanair, and they're warning that shareholders might actually get a weaker presentation when it comes to summer fares. That's for air travel. How's this been digested over there?
Yeah, not great, actually, for Ryanair. Ryanair, Europe's busiest airline carrier by passenger numbers. They have released an update to shareholders, as you said, today. Not great, pretty poor, actually, their numbers. Their profits are down £338 million year on year, and that's for the second quarter, so that's April to June. And bosses have said, Michael O'Leary, he's a pretty fiery boss at Ryanair, doesn't mince his words when he talks, but he says that this is about operational costs, which have been much higher, but then also consumer habits have changed. It does appear as if British holidaymakers have become quite frugal, and it kind of makes sense because, of course, we are comparing the numbers to last year, and for most people, most ordinary folk, you weren't able to travel during COVID, so lots of people were rushing to book a decent summer holiday last year, so therefore the demand was higher. Very easy for airline bosses to put up the prices. Not so much this year. I think now that people have had their taste of sun, cost of living crisis still going on, they're holding back at the checkout. And that's why Ryanair have had to reduce their summer prices. In fact, I think they've been slashing tickets by up to 15%. And that's obviously impacted their bottom lines. So quite worrying times for them. They do believe that there will be a pickup towards the end of the year, but certainly £338 million off their profit, not great. And that's why their share price is down about 24% today.
Yeah, quite interesting. I guess another business cycle right there. But how are the markets kicking off the week?
Markets are in pretty good shape at intraday. Of course, everybody is reacting to US President Joe Biden's decision to not stand for re-election. Still a little bit of anxiety, although it does appear as if European markets, particularly here in London, have responded quite well to that. There are pros and cons because, of course, if there is a Trump victory in November, then some analysts would suggest that, hey, this is great for markets, right? We've got a Republican Party. There should be business-friendly policies. We're seeing the likes of Elon Musk and other Silicon Valley billionaires endorsing Donald Trump. But then on the other hand, if we do get a Kamala Harris presidency, then we will continue along the lines of investing in electric vehicles, investing in green energy. The markets may not like that, but we know that, you evolve or die, right? That's where the trajectory of the world is going. And these policies have been seen as quite a good thing. Positive results on the markets following Biden's declaration of not standing for re-election. If we have a look at those numbers more specifically, the all share is up at intraday by 0.72%. FTSE 100, the blue chip, that's up by 0.73% at intraday, Laddie. The FTSE 250, the domestic market, up by nearly 0.5%. In the currencies market, the British pound is trading up against the US dollar by 0.05%, up 2 against the euro by 0.11%, but down against the Japanese yen by 0.32% at intraday, Laddie.
All right, Jonah, thank you so much. Always great having your update. Thank you. All right, let's get a check on Europe now. See many company operations are largely back to normal after Friday's Crowdstrike IT outage across most parts of Europe. But experts are warning it may take weeks for businesses to fully recover. Joining us with more now, we have DW correspondent Chimpondo Chimbelu right there in Berlin. Great to have you, Chip. So what do we know about the impact of the IT outage in Europe?
Thanks for having me. Well, Laddie, over the weekend, Microsoft said that the outage caused by IT vendor CrowdStrike affected 8.5 million Windows devices. Now, that is less than 1% of Windows devices used worldwide, but these were machines used in many critical services, including banks, transportation services, so airlines, airports, and rail operations, and even hospitals. The outage had the biggest impact, of course, on international travel. Thousands of flights were canceled on Friday, leaving crew and planes in the wrong cities. And of course, airports were also struggling with checking in systems and security. So dozens of thousands of travelers missed their flights. And here in Germany, international airports in Berlin, Hamburg, and Frankfurt were only able to resume most of their services on Saturday. And in some countries, patient medical records couldn't be accessed as a result of the IT outage. And that was the case for the UK's National Health Service and, of course, some health providers in Germany and Austria. Now, experts are saying it could take days or even weeks for businesses and organizations to fully recover. So this is, of course, something that policymakers are watching closely.
And talking about policy makers, how do you see them responding to this incident?
We could see policymakers double down on antitrust efforts. The fact that one incident affected businesses and organizations in a wide range of sectors across the world has shown that the over-reliance on a few providers is a problem and a challenge, of course. So this is, of course, something that will provide policymakers who have been pushing for more competition, so having more players on the market in some tech sectors to make their case. Despite the fact that less than 1% of Windows devices were affected, the impact was felt by millions across the world. This may, of course, also be linked to tech giant Microsoft's market dominance. The US company has also, of course, been increasingly facing antitrust scrutiny, so many have also been saying that it gave up its seat as an observer on the board of OpenAI as a result. But it's, of course, not just about competition. The reliance on tech also shows that it's about security. Over-reliance on a few providers could potentially be putting millions across the world at risk, even when it comes to accessing medical services, as was the case in the UK, Germany, and Austria.
Yeah, quite interesting. I hope there's normalcy now, but what can we expect from the markets today in Europe?
Laddie, European markets are expected to trade slightly higher today. And of course, that comes after stocks fell Friday amid the CrowdStrike IT outage. Now, the focus today, of course, once again, is on the U.S. presidential elections. Wall Street futures rose following U.S. President Joe Biden's announcement that he won't stand for re-election. And of course, we all know now that he has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris's Democrat nominee. And what she now needs to do is to get enough delegates to secure the party nomination. So investors will be watching developments there as well. And here in Europe, it's there's not much economic data slated for release today, but eyes will be on German software giant SAP, which will release its Q2 results after European markets close.
All right, thank you so much, Chimpondo Chibelu, giving us the details right there in the markets in Europe. All right, let's look at other stories. You see, in Kenya, anti-government riots that disrupted the economy for the past month spooked investors, and that's hurting the currency, which has suffered its longest decline since January. The shilling weakened for 9 straight days to 130 per dollar at the close Friday trading in Nairobi, paring its year-to-date gains to 17%, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. But it was up less than 0.1% in early trading, while it's still Africa's best-performing currency this year. Last week's drop was the largest since April. Protests erupted in Kenya in mid-June, urging the government to halt tax increases and address corruption. At least 53 people have died and more than 400 have been injured. And to North Africa. Now, Egypt's natural gas production fell to its lowest level since February 2018, and that's according to data from the Joint Organizations Data Initiative. Data also indicated that Egypt's oil production significantly declined from its highest point in March 2021, when it produced about 6.13 million metric tons to 4.28 billion metric tons in May 2024. That's about a 30% decrease. Jody is a global energy data provider coordinated by the International Energy Forum in 2005. He aims to improve market transparency, ease the process of making well-informed decisions, improve the stability and confidence of the market. And still talking about the IT outage on Friday, let's get a check of how this impacted most parts of Africa. Now, joining us for this conversation, we have Victor Deamos, a UX designer, joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I guess we have some normalcy now, but what do we expect going forward post-outage? We're still seeing some businesses having to get some time to actually come back online at this time. What are you seeing?
From what I see, and the speculation is it's a tech ecosystem issue where there's over-reliance on some services. And in this case, it's a cloud-based technology service that is relied on by a lot of companies, like we had Microsoft, including Bank of England, suffering from this mishap. But moving forward, we have to look at how the tech ecosystem can get a level of reliance on not third-party based systems, but domestic softwares and technologies, both for hardware devices and software as well.
Talking about over-reliance, it seems China seemed to be unaffected from the outage we saw on Friday. Well, do you think some parts of Africa were also not affected?
I think there's a little news about South Africa being affected. However, China were hardly scratched by it. Those affected in China were majorly international firms or international companies like hotels, but largely the ecosystem in China kept running like nothing happened. And that's because they have reduced their reliance on third-party based systems and foreign service providers. This is also outside cybersecurity operations, by the way. China has they have been actively reducing foreign systems and hardware in their departments in the past 5 or 6 years. And an example is most of their cloud-based technology is dependent on things like Alibaba, Huawei, and Tencent, which they didn't need to use Crowdstrike at all for most of their systems, and that's why they were not affected.
All right, talk to me about a country like Nigeria. What should we be doing with this kind of information at this time?
I think how we can learn from this scenario is to build a tech ecosystem that is highly dependent on domestic service providers and not just exporting most of our services to third-party based systems that is highly reliant on international businesses. And this is why China is currently enjoying some level of national security, because they can depend on some of the technologies they have built themselves. And Africa and Nigeria as a whole can learn from this.
Yeah, we definitely need to learn from this, and pretty fast, because we see the cost is estimated at about $1 billion at this point, and Microsoft says about 8.5 million Windows devices were affected. Quantifying the damage, how much damage is this doing to CrowdStrike's reputation?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge damage, because from what I see, it's a software update which had a bug, and the recovery process is going to take longer than usual, because now the way recovery is going to happen for some of these devices is going to use things like individual remote systems. And so these systems have to be handled individually and not through a general software update that affected all the systems. So that's why there's going to be a need for enterprises and companies to wait for each of these devices that have been affected to be handled individually, which is really going to be a problem. 8.5 million devices are a lot of devices. And of course, the biggest shares or the biggest enterprises will receive most of the attention first from CrowdStrike and Microsoft, but small and medium-large businesses are really going to be affected before they get the attention that they need. And this is where things like, this is a big disadvantage, because they might want to seek help from people outside CrowdStrike or Microsoft, and this can lead to data breaches from people that, from fraudsters or people, or what do we call them now? Those that try to breach different industry and different. So
we know the hackers are going to try to come out and play at this point. But I remember when I heard the news on Friday, I was afraid to open up my Windows laptop because I didn't want to see that blue screen of death. But I opened it at some point and it wasn't there. But thank you so much. It was great having you, Victor Adeyemo, UX designer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, let's get a check on the crypto market now. If you see the screen there, we're seeing big greens, but the little pockets of red at this point, with Ethereum leading. That's the king of the altcoins at this point. Ethereum, that's in the red there, 0.12% down. But we see Bitcoin holding up 0.79%, $67,511 per coin. We're looking at sub 50,000 at some point, but we're seeing a big recovery with Bitcoin for a couple of days now. Let's look at some of the headlines. We see WazirX, the Indian exchange, they've halted trading at this point, still based on the issue with the exchange getting hacked, and seeing that the hackers actually turning most of those coins into Ethereum, trying to get them sold. Then US Bitcoin ETFs, they got a record inflow of $17 billion at this point. And I guess that's why we're seeing the market still up at this time, Bitcoin still rallying. And I guess we have some kind of inverse relation with the ETF inflows. When you see ETF inflows going up, then that means we're seeing good price action for Bitcoin. All right, let's bring in Gilbert Jopata now, financial market analyst. Hello, Gilbert.
Good to be here.
Fantastic. I can hear you now, Gilbert. So it's a brand new trading week, and definitely we're seeing a lot of action, coming for Bitcoin. But do you see any headwinds this week that could stop this rally we're seeing with Bitcoin?
Okay, the thing is, Bitcoin began its bullish movement during the weekend, and it has carried it even to the new week, and it's going to continue in a smaller time frame. I think it's going to continue to its resistant level, which is about 69, 70K. The thing is that technically we are forming a descending channel. So there are little possibility of a breakout. We rather have more possibility of a downside movement after we hit the resistance, just in a smaller time frame. Then I think there are some data we should look out for, which will happen this week, which is a macroeconomic data, which is the PCE data coming out on Friday, is expected to be low, and this will potentially influence the Federal Reserve to cut rates. We are looking at potentially September this year since this, most of this expectation is coming since last month CPI data actually came cooler than even expected. And it has led already to the market pricing in a rate cut, this year. Economics has also priced in that this week PCE data could be 0.1% increase, but still cooler, which will continue the slowdown on inflation. And it could lead, and it will actually lead us to actually the Fed's, below the Fed's 2% target, which they have always reiterated that once we have the 2%, that's when they will stop this rate hike, and all that. But then when we also look at the fact that one of the leading presidential candidates in America is Donald Trump, who is a crypto president, there are a whole lot of more bigger time frame bullish movements. But for the week, I think we are going to continue our bullish level to the resistant level with more possibility of a breakdown rather than a breakout.
All right, but do you still see more inflows? We saw a record inflow about $17 billion into the U.S. Bitcoin ETFs. Do you see more coming?
We have already had the ETF being approved, so we are going to see even more volume come to the market. In general, institutional investors are going to have more bags in. And the fact that we're having this ETF being approved means that we are going to have traditional investors in the stock market now have Bitcoin, buying it as an ETF. So there's going to be a lot more inflow coming into the market. As a matter of fact, I think when we finally have that breakdown, we are going to have that massive major price surge because we've not had it. If you look at the resistance level that Bitcoin is in right now, it's the same level as at the 2021 bull market. So we have not had that breakup top that always lead us to that massive surge from alts.
And definitely, I know some investors are looking out for the glorious alt season at some point, if that's ever going to come. But thank you so much, Gilbert Vokpata, financial market analyst. Always great having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that's the show today. You can visit channelscv.com for more updates. I'm Ladi Williams from the team. I'm right here at Channels HQ. It's bye for now. See you for the MPC decision tomorrow.